What area in your life do you need to believe God for a turnaround? I think in Adar, it's important that we name that area. We get clear and say, okay, God, in this month of Adar, I'm accepting your invitation for a divine reversal for joy, and I need to turn around here in my health. I need to turn around here in my finances. I need to turn around here in my mindset. We need to shift from a passive form of waiting to an active form of expectation. Hi, I'm Megann Marcellino, and I want to welcome you back today to Generations at the Table. Thank you so much for pulling up a seat and spending some time with me. Today, I'm really honored to get to talk to you about the month of Adar, a month that is known for joy, a month that is known for divine reversals. It is the month where Purim is celebrated, and there's so much in that story that resonates with this month, but it is really more than that. It is a month where we can lean into a season of time and preparation, where the Lord is positioning us for success in our future in the year ahead. You know, that's what happened with Esther. She went through a time of extensive preparation, 12 months before she stepped into that moment of change, that moment that shifted everything. It was a moment that was identity-based. It was a moment that was based on who she is. But in the month of Adar, we can expect a season of joy and a season of divine reversals. So how do we position ourselves? How do we live and make choices? How do we develop our habits and patterns in order to walk in sync with that? I believe that this is a time where God is going to reset, reposition, and allow us to step into joy. But here's the key. It's even before our circumstances shift. I think a lot of times we wait on joy, right? We wait for something to manifest for us to be able to feel it. But in Adar, God is inviting us to step into a season of joy even before our circumstances is shift. And we need to trust that God is always working behind the scenes. I can only imagine as Esther was, preparing herself during that 12 months that she's like, what's happening here? Like, are you moving? Why am I here? What am I doing? Even if it was a good experience, it was a period of waiting and an anticipation of what's next. Why am I here? And God, how are you using me? Listen to this. The Talmud states when Adar enters, joy increases, which this means that joy is not necessarily always linked to our circumstances, but it is linked to God's promises. So I believe that we are walking into a season of great joy and a season of anticipation of God preparing the future ahead of us. So question for us would be, how can we step into joy this month? Like, what does that look like practically? How do we do that? How does joy impact us as wives, as mothers, as people in business, as people in ministry? Because I think it can be hard to to celebrate joy in the face of uncertainty. Esther could have been like, well, I'm just in this waiting season. And so it's really going to be hard for me to embrace that. But what we can learn from the story is that we have to use seasons of uncertainty, use seasons of preparation and still embrace that moment as a place and a benchmark of joy in our life. We can't wait just for our circumstances to shift. We can't wait for our moment for the King and say, okay, now I'm going to be happy. Now I'm going to be joyful. Now I'm going to be at peace. True discipleship is learning to walk in joy, in peace, in the middle and in the waiting. The Jewish people faced annihilation. It was an incredibly tense moment. You can look at what's happening in the world today and say, this is an incredibly intense moment. But their fear turned to a season of joy when God stepped in. God was working behind the scenes all along, but they weren't seeing it in the details until there was that moment where we see, in Esther 4, where it's a very famous quote where it's like, who knows that you have not come for such a time as this. But the verses that lead up to that are speaking to the threat that's happening. And we always focus on that for such a time as this. Well, it was the threats. It was the fear of annihilation of an entire people that led to that moed, that led to that divine appointment, that led to that climax of, you've been positioned for such a time as this to be used of God. See, Psalms 30 verse 5, says, weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. And Nehemiah 8:10 says, the joy of the Lord is your strength. Adar is an invitation to joy, and joy is a tool in spiritual warfare. I'm going to say that again. Adar is an invitation for joy, and joy is a tool for spiritual warfare. I think sometimes we think of spiritual warfare limited to us pacing the room and making decrees and declaring. And yes, that is a form, but as such, joy is as well. When we can say, I'm going to operate from a place of joy, recognizing that it's not just happiness, but choosing to have an uplifted spirit in the midst of our circumstances, no matter what they are, that is warring against the antics of the enemy. And it's warring against that negative mindset. It's warring against overwhelm, chaos, and confusion. It's in choosing joy. So how can we do that? I believe that you can do that through praise. Praise acts as a weapon. So you can choose praise worship that's upbeat, worship that is going to lift your spirit in spite of what you're walking through. And then also laughter, choosing laughter. I don't know if maybe you're not a person of laughter. I love to laugh. One of the lessons that I said that my parents taught me in their 50th wedding anniversary was to laugh first, laugh loud, and laugh often. Rabbi always says that, we joke with him that he has what we call the power laugh. And it is it just busts out laughing, but it's really hard not to laugh along with him. It's really hard to not participate, but laughter releases endorphins and dopamines and oxytocin so that it literally overwhelms the stress receptors in your system. It overwhelms that and says, no, we're going to replace this with joy. So finding ways that you can laugh. What makes you laugh? Maybe it's a movie, maybe it's a friend. I just have those friends that I know that I can call and I'm going to get a good laugh. I have a friend that will send me funny messages and things like, guess what happened to me? And it just makes me laugh and it brings me joy. So how can I push into that in the month of Adar and not choose to doom scroll and not choose things that basically hamper my joy? If God wants to give me joy, if Adar is an invitation, how do I accept it? How do I position myself? I think one of the other things that we can wrestle with in season like this is feeling stuck in cycles of delay. Sometimes things in our life are delayed that we really, really want. And I was trying to think of maybe a personal story that I could share with you. And there's just, there's been delays. There's been things in my life that I felt like were far off, but then they come to pass, they manifest, and it's such a refreshing moment. But in the delay and in the waiting, how do we maintain our mindset of praise and joy? We obviously have a ministry and we've had many hirings, and sometimes the hire comes right on and it's just immediate and the seat is filled and the Lord is so gracious, and that is amazing. But there's other times where we've had to wait and we've had to go through a lot of applicants, or we've not had a lot of applicants. Either way, it's a cycle of delay, and it's Lord, I know we need the right person in the right seat for this job. I know that we need this person to help us advance the kingdom. Where are they? And the delay can be frustrating. But what I've learned is that often my desire and God's timing aren't always in sync. And so if I'm going to live a lifestyle of surrender, then I have to surrender to God's timing and waiting for the right person for the right seat. Now, could we just hire the wrong person and fill the seat? Sure. But that means we operate outside of God's timing, and then we suffer the consequences, and our whole team would suffer the consequences. So this is just an example at being at peace with the delay and trusting that the Lord is going to bring, for me in that situation, the right person at the right time. For you, maybe it's a relationship. Maybe you're waiting on a spouse. Maybe you're waiting on a child. Maybe you're waiting on a financial breakthrough. We've all been there where we're just waiting on something to happen. But remember, as my dad often reminds me, delay is not denial. So in Adar, if you feel like you're in that cycle of delay, press into joy and press into the hope and the anticipation of what the Lord is going to do. And press out of that frustration. When Haman's decree was sealed, the Jewish people were set for destruction. But in a moment, there was a divine reversal. In a moment, their situation turned around. In a moment, God rewrote the story and he said, no, this is the ending I have. So you may feel like in that delay that the verdict has been sealed. This is my destination. I'm here to encourage you that Adar is a season and a month of divine reversals. So don't give up hope. Don't give up faith. Romans 8:28 says, so we are convinced that every detail of our lives is continually woven together for good. This means that even the delays, this means even those moments when we feel like we've been denied, even those moments of fear, that they are being woven together for good. For we are his lovers who have been called to fulfill his design purpose. Isaiah 61:3 says to give them a beautiful crown instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of heaviness. I think we read that scripture and we push into the crown and the oil of joy and the garment of praise. But what about the ashes? What about the heaviness? What about the mourning? See, beautiful joy comes from those moments. It is a refining process for our character. It is often something that we don't enjoy, but God pulls us from that and gives us something better. But sometimes it's hard to recognize the better unless you've been pulled up and out of that valley. So what area in your life do you need to believe God for a turnaround? Perhaps it's an area of finance. Perhaps it's an area of your marriage, your motherhood, your career path, your, a relationship, an area of maybe it's a spiritual place. Maybe you're battling fear, anxiety, depression, something like that. But what area in your life do you need to believe God for a turnaround? I think in Adar, it's important that we name that area. We get clear and say, okay, God, in this month of Adar, I'm accepting your invitation for a divine reversal for joy. And I need to turn around here in my health. I need to turn around here in my finances. I need to turn around here in my mindset. We need to shift from a passive form of waiting to an active form of expectation. Okay, so our expectation is not just waiting and doing nothing. It is expecting God to move on our behalf. It is expecting that divine reversal. And we need to celebrate the victories when we have them, even the small ones. Don't downplay, okay, my savings went up a little bit. My health turned around a little bit. Like, celebrate those victories and move towards them. Our family is kind of big on pre-celebrations. Like, even if we think there's going to be good news, it's like, let's have a dinner and celebrate that. You know what? It's a little bit silly, and I give my husband and my dad a little bit of a hard time about it, but I'm so glad we have those, because so many times, sometimes things don't happen exactly like we plan, but we've had a lot more celebrations because we were hoping for good and we were anticipating that turnaround. So if Adar is a month for a divine reset, if it is a time for us to refocus and reposition ourselves for what? Well, the upcoming month that we're getting ready to go into next will be the month of Nisan, the month of Passover. So I'm just encouraging you that the Lord is repositioning you to go into that Passover season. And then what is that position is for? To cross over into our promised land. See, the year is just a step by step by step. And every year we go through this cycle. And the Lord will meet you here this year. He'll meet you here next year. He met you there last year. Maybe you didn't even recognize it. Maybe you weren't even aware. But Adar is a month for a reset. It is a month for a divine reversal. It is a month to reposition ourselves for acceleration, to get out of that delay and to move into the promise that God has for us. So, is there one area that you can take a bold step of faith and a bold step of obedience into the place that you think God has called you? Because again, waiting is not just passive. It's an active anticipation, active expectation. And so I would ask you, okay, if this is your area that you need a reset in, what is one area that you can take a divine step boldly into that direction? But again, it needs to align with the word and it needs to align with your assignment. Don't go out and create an Ishmael, but what is something that you can do to activate that release, to activate that acceleration? In motherhood, let's talk about motherhood and marriage for just a minute. How is it impacted the month of Adar? I think it's really an opportunity for us to speak to our children about purpose. Speak to our children about identity. I mean, you can talk to them about the Purim story, but more than that, you can talk to them about Esther. Esther had to know who she was, even though that moment was in hiding for a while. Her identity was hidden from her, but she had to deep down know who she was, and she could not forget. Even if it was not heir to the palace, she had to know who she was. And then she had to have faith and boldness and walk in obedience. What an important life lesson that is. This is a moment for us to talk to our kids about that. This is a moment for us to talk to them about their identity, that it is something that is sometimes hidden within us, but that God is going to use it in his times and in his season. And then what about marriage? How can you put this into marriage? I think in marriage, it's important to know who you are and who your spouse is and how God is bringing that into unity to fulfill his divine purpose. So again, that's who you are and who your spouse is. And you are both, yes, we have been made one flesh, but you are both two separate entities. Paul and I are one flesh, but we're totally on different paths. Like in our, we focus on different things, but it's all moving towards a divine destiny. It's all moving towards unlocking kingdom destinies. It's all moving towards advancing the kingdom. But he does it in this lane and I do it in that lane. And here's where we merge. But recognizing that and being okay with that. And then I think as families, how can we embrace embrace joy? What is one thing that we can do this month to embrace joy? Maybe it's a small little outing. Maybe it's a hike. Maybe it's a little, going out to the movies. Maybe it's a little shopping trip. Maybe it's just, a special dinner. Whatever it is, how can you embrace joy and choose joy? Because remember, the Hebrew months are invitations. Just like prophetic words, they're opportunities. And we get to choose if we embrace them, if we accept them, and if we walk in them. So if you want to accept the month of Adar in its fullness, you have to make choices as such. You can't just say, I'm sitting here and I'm going to receive. Yes, there is a lot of receiving in the moment, but there's also those baby steps of obedience, not creating Ishmaels, but following the word of the Lord and following his instruction. So this month, I want to encourage you to choose joy before you feel it, to push past delays and disappointments, and not let those negative thoughts take root. Embrace your God-given identity. Even if you feel like it's been in hiding, embrace it internally. Recognize this season of divine reversals and claim it for that one area in your life. Write it down, find a scripture, and begin to push towards it in your steps, your habits, your patterns, and your obedience. Adar is a month for you to step into joy and to favor. Adar is a month for you to be repositioned and to position yourself for the accelerating season of Passover in our promised land. I hope that this has met you where you're at as maybe a wife, as maybe a mom, maybe as a woman who has a career, maybe you have a ministry, maybe you have a business. Don't look at those areas where you are not. That's what I would encourage you. Don't say, well, I wish I was a wife, or I wish I was a mom, or I wish I had a better relationship with my kids, or I wish I had a better relationship with my spouse. Yes, those are all moments of grief, but look at the moment of where you do find fulfillment and focus on that moment of joy. Don't look at the lack, look at the abundance. And then that abundance is going to lead you to be able to skip those gaps or to fill those gaps in your life, because we all have those gaps that we wish was a little bit different. But focus this month on the good part and see how that overflow might begin to heal and mend those places that need that need repair, or that have a desire that's been wanting, and recognize that God is using this delay to position you for success and abundance in the future. Thanks so much for joining me today. I look forward to being with you again next week, same time, same place.